Let me pass it to Dom and get your live reaction and get your comments on what I've just announced.
What the Keep it PG. What? Okay, that makes sense why you would switch everything.
And welcome back to yet another episode of Zillennial Money. If I'm reading this correctly, we are on episode 28 now, I think. So we were gone for a week. That was just because I was there at Bitcoin Nashville, which we'll talk about that story soon. So before I do all of that, though, let me pass it off to you guys for a brief intro for audience members who might be new.
Hey guys, what's going on? So it's Dominic here. So hope you guys enjoyed today's show. So please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get started here.
Hey guys, Tristan here. We've got a packed show for you today, so I'll toss it back to Andy to take it away.
Yep. So before we jump into today's stories, I do have a special announcement to make. I don't mean to make this episode all about me, but the first kind of two things are both about me personally. So yeah, let's start with my announcement, right? So before I jump into today's stories, there's been an update for me in terms of my career, and unfortunately, it's not a good one, or it might be a good one. Who knows, right? But yeah, unfortunately, as of today, I have been fired from my job at Newton. So I already told Tristan this, but I'm kind of getting a live reaction from Dom right now. He's hearing about it for the first time. So yeah, let me just say, first of all, I'm not gonna badmouth Newton. Okay, it's a great company, and in case you guys don't know, Newton is a big crypto exchange here in Canada. It's one of the biggest, and I absolutely love everyone that I work with, and everyone's been great. Yeah, it wasn't because of anything bad I did, by the way. It was just like the company's downsizing, yeah, I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want to get myself into trouble, but I will say that I made these business cards that I handed out for at Bitcoin Nashville, and it has my work email on it, which now no longer works. So unless the people that I met at Nashville, unless they subscribe to this channel, which they totally should, by the way, unless they subscribe to this channel, if they try to email me, they will realize that email now bounces. So yeah, anyways, that's the kind of update. And you'll notice why, Dom, that I asked you to use a new meeting link, because my old meeting link was actually, I was using my work account, which is now deactivated, right? So I had to go out and get the, Google Workspace Premium, whatever it's called, so that I can actually record these podcast episodes. So yeah, that's why I had to cancel the old calendar invite and make a new one. So yeah, that's the update. And I don't want to dwell too much and waste too much time on this. But let me pass it to you, Dom, since you reacted so much. I know the audience members didn't see that, but he was thrown back in his seat. So let me pass it to Dom and get your live reaction and get your comments on what I've just announced.
What the Keep it PG. What? Okay, that makes sense why you would switch everything. That's pretty insane. It's the economy nowadays, so I do understand why this is the case. To be honest, I'm working a contract job for you audience members that you don't know. So that ends pretty soon. So I do understand how Andy feels. But I feel like Andy, if you were in a classroom with 30 kids and then it was Newton as the teacher, he would be the number one star. So it completely surprises me how they no longer want to work with you for whatever reason. I don't know the details, but I think that's completely insane. But also this could be a blessing in disguise if you got some sort of severance package and then you find something really soon afterwards, or you could double down on this podcast, Zillennial Reacts. I don't know. I would partake. You could side edit that project, and then I would I'd be down for that. But what the? Yeah, I'm not saying it. I don't. It's just in case I don't want to get flagged. So, dang, dude. So what's next then? What's the plan for you?
Yeah, so I just got the news yesterday, and it was my first day back from Nashville, so not a welcome surprise for sure, but it is what it is. Clearly, they made this decision a long time ago, and they didn't give me a chance to kind of defend myself or anything because, again, it's not anything that I did wrong. It's just the company downsizing. So what is the plan from now on? Well, obviously, first thing, the audience members of this show get to benefit because now I have way more time to focus on doing this. So I know you guys still have a day job and everything. So, your commitment right now is good enough. But in terms of extra stuff I can do for this channel, if you're watching this, if you're an audience member, be sure to leave a comment down below on what I should do with my extra time because I can now work on this channel more. So, there's that. In terms of like actual making money stuff, because like this channel is kind of small right now, it doesn't make money yet. It's not monetized. In terms of actual like stuff, oh yeah, and Dom just texted Zillennial money reacts. That's definitely something that could be a thing down the line. But yeah, in terms of like me personally, what I'm gonna do in the future, I had another channel that I kind of abandoned. I don't know if any of you guys know about it, but it's called Andy's Fire Club, and FIRE is a movement that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. So that's kind of like a movement that I got into, and I'm still committed to it. I just like was too lazy to make videos, and then like I started this channel with you guys, and this channel's more fun because it's got you guys and it's got more people. So it's better than like doing a channel by myself. So I kind of abandoned that other channel, but I'm still committed to that goal of retiring early. And I think like my original goal was to retire by 35. And like maybe this is what sets apart me from other people is that like if something like this, if they get fired, if other people get fired, they're like, oh, I might have to push back my retirement goals and stuff like that. Well, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to raise the bar instead of lower the bar. So you heard it on this channel first. I am going to retire by 30. And I am 28 right now. So that's 2 years from now. So 2025, maybe give me till like 2026, even though my birthday's like my 30th birthday is in 2025, but it's in December. So it's essentially 2026. So whatever, right? Like I think both I've worked this job for a long time and I've made like sort of a lot of income already up until this point to set myself up for something great. If Bitcoin miners and all my Tesla, all my other investments go where I think they're going in the next 6 to 12 months, I of course I'm not fully counting on that, but I am counting on that a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, but we'll see how that plays out. So yeah, that's kind of the update. Now let's get Tristan's reaction to this news. Take it away.
Yeah, I did not see that coming. I was quite surprised. I was like, really? I feel like for going into a Bitcoin bull run, it just seems like now is not the time I would want to be downsizing in a crypto company. Now's the time I would be, ramping stuff up. So it just seems it is very surprising across the board. And I know you're kind of taking it in stride, but I know it's also can be a stressful time to lose one's job at any point. So I wish you well on your future paths on that front as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I'm taking it in stride mostly because like quite frankly, I'm used to it by now, right? This isn't the first time that this has happened to me. And quite frankly, this isn't the first time this has happened to me at Newton. So I've been fired from Newton once already before this. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but I entered Newton as like a team lead on the customer support team. So I worked that job for a bit, and then I was doing all this research on Bitcoin and like writing all this content on Bitcoin. So like my manager at the time was like, hey, like we got a position like open on the marketing team. Do you want to go over there and go work for the marketing team, and you can write content full time? And I was like, that's great. So I went there, and then crypto winter hit. And then, marketing's usually the first thing to go during like a crypto winter or something. So I was fired. And then I started looking for other jobs. And then like it was the CFO of Newton at the time who by now had already left. So like she's not the CFO anymore, is a different person now. But the then CFO, this was like 2023, right? So like summer of 2023. So summer last year. The then CFO of Newton was like, hey, we got a position opening up on the finance department. Do you want to take this job? And I was like, heck yeah. Like, and then I got a nice raise compared to my marketing job as well. So I went back to Newton, and then now this happens, right? So this isn't even the first time that I got fired from Newton, never mind the first time that I got fired. So like, I think I've had a tumultuous career for someone who's 28 years old, right? Like I'm still pretty young, I think, right? By like, all things considered. And this is just the life that I chose, right? I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I didn't choose the startup life. The startup life chose me. And it's like, you got to be kind of like willing to go through these like volatility. Like I'm willing to like stomach the volatility of Bitcoin, and I'm also willing to stomach the volatility career wise. And I'm not prescribing this method for everyone by any means, because I know that like this lifestyle is probably not the healthiest for your heart for everyone. But for me, it's not a big deal. So yeah, anyways, it is what it is. That's it for the update. So yeah, going forward, it'll be on this account, which means nothing to our audience because like nothing will change from the viewership wise. But please click on this new event link going forward. So that's the update. And then now on to the real stories. This second story is also about me. So excuse me, don't mean to manspread all over this show, but I'm going to talk about my Nashville experience. So I went to Bitcoin Nashville 2024, and it was honestly a great time. It was a 3-day conference. And I had the regular festival pass, so the first day was only for the industry pass holders. So I didn't do much on the first day, but for the second 2 days, a lot did happen. So I met up with quite a few people that I've only seen on YouTube so far, with Bryce from McNally Money, and I took a photo. I'll put it up in post here. Bryce from McNally Money, Anthony from Power Mining Analysis, and I met up with Sebastian Ski as well. So we took a photo together, and gave all of them a copy of my book too. So in case you guys didn't know that, I have a book called Hyper Bitcoinization. I don't have one handy around me right now, but maybe I'll put up a picture of that too, of the cover. So I gave them all copies of my book. I met up with Steven from Bitfarms, who Steven is the chief marketing person from Bitfarms. You guys know I'm a big investor in Bitfarms, and I told him that, and he was like really proud. And he's like, we can't advise people to like buy the stock or anything like that, obviously, but in my opinion, not financial advice, I think Bitfarms is pretty undervalued for what it is, and I'm glad I got to shake hands with Steven. So there's that. I also met up with Bobby Lee, who, if you guys don't know who he is the author of the book called The Promise of Bitcoin. And he's also the founder of a company called Ballet. And Ballet makes just, those kind of wallets, the Bitcoin wallets. And one product actually that they make is called the physical Bitcoin. So it's a copper Bitcoin, like a physical coin. And then there's like a QR code in the back, and they preload the Bitcoin with like Bitcoin, right? They preload the physical Bitcoin with real Bitcoin, and then yeah, it's just kind of cool how like it's like a tangible way to hold actual Bitcoin in your hand. And I got a few of those. And funny enough, like I think it's a regulatory thing. They're not allowed to sell it everywhere. So there's only 25 states in the United States that's allowed to sell the physical Bitcoin with the Bitcoin preloaded, and Tennessee is one of them that is allowed to sell those coins. But you know, it's not available everywhere, and it's not available in Canada. Certainly, they don't sell internationally. So if you don't go to their booth at the Bitcoin conference, there's nowhere else you can get it. So there's that. And then I met up with a bunch of like just, you know, random people from all over the world at the Bitcoin conference. You know, people that I met in line while waiting for this speech, that speech. The Donald Trump speech was, which we'll talk about later. That one I lined up like 3 hours in advance for it. So I had a lot of time to talk to people that I met in line. So the next picture is some people that I met in line. It's like a, you know, father and son duo from Massachusetts, and then the black gentleman is from Texas. So I met up with them, and we talked a bunch of you know, Bitcoin related stuff. Gave them copies of my book as well, and then I never make any money from my book because I just give it to everyone for free. So yeah. Anyways, there's some like decorations. I saw this like, you know, Trump kind of raising his fist. But it's inside of his fist is a Bitcoin kind of picture. And then there's this isn't Bitcoin related, but somebody had a Cybertruck that's plastered in Doge. This was pretty cool. And yeah, and then I saw the Trump speech as well. So we can briefly talk about the kind of Trump speeches, but you know, I want to give you guys like an opportunity to you know, have a comment and stuff like that, because I know next year the Bitcoin conference is coming to Las Vegas. So I've been encouraging you guys to come, and have you guys made a decision? Will you join me? Because I already bought my ticket for Las Vegas actually, so I'm going for sure. But what about you guys? What's your opinion? Do you think that this would be something that you're interested in for next year, or do you have any thoughts in general about the Bitcoin Nashville conference?
I'll start off with like Vegas. So I say tentative. I think I would take it a little more seriously come let's say January, because you said it was in May, right, Andy, or something? Or okay, yeah. So it is in May. Yeah, maybe January, like as of like the new year of 25, I would put it in consideration. And in terms of like the whole Nashville experience for yourself, it's so cool. You met like executive people from like Bitfarms. I think as like we all know that you're a huge like Bitfarms bull, so like meeting them in person is probably really cool. And just meeting new people in general is quite neat. And then I didn't realize that you just gave everyone your book. I thought it was just us exclusively. So I thought you were making some sort of profit, but maybe you have. Like I don't know. Isn't it on Amazon? But I think um you I don't remember you talking a lot about the Trump uh conference. Maybe I didn't check the chat, but yeah, it would be cool and neat to like maybe see that on YouTube and know more about what he said. I'll have to do some research on that. But yeah, no, I'm glad you had a good time. That seemed like a lot of fun. So sick. Dope.
Yeah, so it seemed like you had a good time at the conference. There's a lot of different people that you could speak to, and different execs. So I'm sure you got a lot of exposure to interesting people who have important things to say, which I think is fairly valuable. Looked like, and I think meeting some of these YouTubers, you know, who we've been following for a while, I think that's always a good time, right? So that's fun. With regards to going, we'll see how the Bitcoin bull run treats me. I think is probably more so what I'm thinking, because you know, it's 200 USD is not super cheap at a glance for me. So if it was if you know, the Bitcoin bull run were to make it super cheap for me, that would be nice. So we'll see what happens on that front, you know.
No, but that's the thing, right? So just to warn you guys, that's the early bird discount price. So the price will go up. So I bought my ticket for Nashville back in 2023 after the Miami conference, which was the 2023 conference, was over. So I got to get the early bird price for Nashville. So I only paid around 200 USD for this conference. However, if you wait till January, like what Dom was suggesting, the price will definitely be more than $200 by then. So I believe for Nashville, if you were to buy the ticket right before the event happens, then it will be, I think, like 600 or 700. I think it was like $700, like $699 if you buy the ticket at the door. So it would be like, if you think $200 is a lot, $700 would probably be unacceptable, right? So just to warn you, like if you want to come, probably have to make your decision within the coming weeks, or never, right? So that's just what it is. Now, actually, let's for the sake of time, let me move on a bit because I do want to spend some time talking about like what I actually saw at the conference, right? Not just like the people. Of course, the people are fantastic, and I want to talk about that as well. But I also want to talk about the content of what was announced, right? So this conference was really famous because we got a lot of politicians speaking at this conference. So not only was Trump and RFK, who are the two main stars, there were other politicians like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a rising star in the Republican side, and then there was senators, right? So I believe Senator Cynthia Loomis, who is from Wyoming, and Senator Tim Scott, who's from South Carolina. They both spoke at the conference as well. So they're both like super pro Bitcoin and stuff. So I just want to, kind of illustrate that this is the first time that we have politicians kind of speaking, whereas like before it was just, the OGs of Bitcoin and the nerds and the, finance people. But now we have the government kind of taking a positive interest in Bitcoin as well, which is nice. And, I don't want to make this political, but they invited Kamala Harris and she refused to come. So right now, it's pretty clear that it's mostly Republicans who are in support of Bitcoin. So maybe we can discuss that. Why are the Democrats against it, and why are Republicans for it? So maybe that will be a topic that we'll discuss later. But let me just go through some of the content of what each kind of person announced, right? So RFK basically went like all in, right? So I feel like RFK is somebody who truly understands Bitcoin. And he says he got into Bitcoin because of the Canadian trucker convoy protest, by the way, where Trudeau just used the Emergencies Act to freeze everyone's bank account, which I know, Tristan, for you, that was like kind of a triggering point for you to pivot into Bitcoin as well, right? So, maybe like we should thank Trudeau for being such a great marketer for Bitcoin, because he converted you and he converted RFK, right? But RFK basically, he went all in, and he's like, if I'm elected president, I will buy up to 4 million Bitcoin. So there's only 21 million Bitcoin that's ever going to be. And right now there's not even 21 million. Right now there's like 19 point something million that have been mined. And out of that, there's like 5 million that's lost. And another million that's in the hands of Satoshi, which has never been moved. So there's only like 13, 14 million that's available at any given time. And RFK wants to buy 4 million Bitcoin if he's elected, right? So, yeah, basically, that was like kind of the biggest announcement. And basically, he's like, promoting all this pro Bitcoin legislation, and he'll definitely like be a great kind of the Bitcoin president if he's elected, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people are saying, he's at like less than 10% in support, maybe just right around there. So he's unlikely to be the next president, unfortunately. So everybody started looking at Trump, right? And I said I lined up 3 hours to see Trump, and it was slightly disappointing, to be honest, because it seems like Trump doesn't understand Bitcoin quite the same way that RFK does, which Trump is old, right? So it's like maybe give him some slack for that, but at least he's willing to get out of the way. That's kind of the like, you know, uh, consensus or the conclusion that I got from this speech is that Trump wants to hodl the current Bitcoin like reserves that the U.S. has, which were seized from illegal activities, and that bag is just over 200,000 Bitcoin. So not quite 4 million like RFK was promising, but it's still a decent chunk. And if the U.S. kind of sets that aside and never sells it and uses it as a reserve, I think that could be really great as well. And then one thing that was really kind of funny was Trump was saying how he is promising to fire Gary Gensler on day one, which Gary Gensler, I'm sure everybody knows who he is in the Bitcoin space, but in case you don't, Gary Gensler is the current chairman of the SEC. And the SEC has, under Gensler, has been known to like go after all these crypto companies and Bitcoin companies, no matter if they're legit or not. They're like kind of trying to regulate them out of existence. And Gary Gensler is friends with Elizabeth Warren, who is the leader of the so-called anti-crypto army. So they're basically they're like close friends who are pushing each other's like agenda and pushing the agenda of like cracking down on Bitcoin and on crypto. So Trump was like, on day one, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler. Everyone started like super like cheering super loudly. And I think Trump was like actually taken aback by how big of a like how popular that was a thing to say, right? Like nobody warned him that this would be like such a well received, like it exceeded his expectations, right? And then he even said, he was like, wow, I didn't think he was this unpopular. And then he's like, you know what, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler. Right? So and then everybody cheered even louder. So yeah, no love for Gensler at Bitcoin Nashville for sure. So that was kind of like what was announced. And then maybe I'll tie this story right into it. So right after that, right after the conference or right after the Trump speech, Bitcoin kind of took a dip. And people are wondering why. And then somebody saw that the US government has moved $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, which is right around 30,000 Bitcoin, to a new wallet. So we weren't sure like what exactly they're doing. So there's speculations that they're trying to dump like 30,000 Bitcoin just to spite Trump, right? Because right now the government is in control by the Dems. And the Dems are, against, like, if Trump is for something, the Dems are probably going to be against it, right? So Trump just announced that, oh, I'm going to hodl all this Bitcoin. And then maybe, this is speculation, I don't know this for sure, but maybe the Dems are like, you can't hodl anything if we just dump it all before the election, right? Just even if you win, then like you won't be able to hodl anything. So maybe there's some kind of political maneuvering going on in the background. But it does appear that the U.S. government has moved 30,000 Bitcoin just on a very weird timing. The timing is very weird, right? It's like right after Trump's Bitcoin Nashville speech. So yeah, basically, now I'm gonna toss the questions to you, and the questions are: first of all, this $2 billion worth of Bitcoin thing. What do you think? Do you think that they did this to spite Trump? Do you think there's some like ulterior motive at play to like kind of get back at Trump for supporting Bitcoin? And what did you think about? I'm not sure if you watched any of the speeches, the RFK speeches and the Trump speech, but if you did, or even if you didn't, just hearing my synopsis of it, what did you think? And who do you think is going to be better for crypto? And who do you think, or Bitcoin, I should say? And who do you think is gonna like? Do you think that this will actually make a difference in the election as a whole?
So I watched part of Trump's speech on it, and I'll say that I wasn't super duper impressed with what he was saying. He was just kind of talking a lot and not saying a whole ton. It seemed, at least in my opinion. That being said, the general perception of I won't get in the way. He's at least there and listening, which, he may just be pandering to the Bitcoin crowd, but I'll take pandering over doing, well, actively against you know. So I would say that he was showing up and proving that he was interested and, outputting, well, showing an expectation that, well, giving us the expectation that he was at least going to not be a problem child for Bitcoin itself. Let it run its course, um, with without government interference, which personally I think is generally a good thing for us and for Bitcoin itself. So that being said, I think that the speech wasn't nearly as bullish or Bitcoin focused as it could have been, and I think that the RFK speech was much more um, convincing on that front, where he talked a lot about those kind of the benefits and the trucker rally where they froze bank accounts and that kind of stuff. A lot of those were big catalysts for people getting into Bitcoin, because you had a clear vision of what the government could do if they chose to do so, because of the fact that they have proven willing to do it in the past. So from that perspective, I think having the ability to insulate yourself from that situation is valuable, particularly given you might not have agreed with the trucker rally or anything, but the fact that they could do it for the trucker rally means that for something that you care about in the future, they could do it for that, right? So whether or not you were on side or against or whatever, the simple fact of the matter is the government has proven willing to act against individuals who are standing up for like protesting in the parliament. And again, whether or not they're being disruptive, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's really just the precedent, I would say, that's kind of that's very problematic. So yeah, so I think RFK kind of gets it, and I think that's kind of the more interesting thing, is that there's a politician who does kind of get it, because I feel like in the past, most of the time when I look at politicians, they're just kind of like they're asking if Google knows if I'm talking, if I get up and walk over to the bench on the other side, those kind of videos where they have no idea how the heck the technology works. They're just spitballing. And I feel like this is a case where he is RFK at least seems like he understands the benefits and the scenario, and as Andy loves to say, the gravity of the situation. So I thought that was a good sign. So did I miss anything? I think
No, that about covers it. Dom, why don't you impart your opinion? What do you think?
So like, to be fair, I don't think I have seen like the Trump or the other interview quite yet, but I probably will check it out as soon as I have the chance. And then in regards to like the 2 billion being transferred, yeah, maybe it's like extremely convenient, so it could possibly be like a reason behind it, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't feel like I can answer like that well enough, because don't know if it's to like create any like stir in the pots, but uh, I'm like
Yeah,
speechless right
no,
now. God.
no worries. Like maybe I can just explain a bit, because if you have questions, maybe our audience members have questions too, right? About this, like, strategic reserve kind of stuff. Like, exactly does it mean, right? So, just think of it as a gold reserve, right? So a lot of countries have a gold reserve, and in fact, China's been building their gold reserve and buying gold like crazy for a long time. And the idea is that if there is some crisis, if there is some war that you need to like fund to defend your country, then fiat money is going to get printed, right? So once that fiat money gets printed, then people are going to stop trusting your fiat money, because what if you lose the war and your country doesn't exist anymore? Then your fiat's worthless, and even if you win, then it's going to get inflated, right? So what countries would do is set aside, let's say, a certain amount of gold, where gold is valuable regardless of if you win or lose the war, and regardless of how well you deal with any type of crisis. So the idea with a Bitcoin reserve is kind of like the gold idea, except Bitcoin is easier to store, and it's harder money than gold, right? Because it's more rare than gold. Gold you can dig for more, and what if you discover a deposit of gold somewhere that you didn't know existed, right? So and gold is heavy, so it's hard to transport and stuff like that. So there's a lot of benefit that Bitcoin has over gold, and it has a lot of similarities on to gold, where gold excels. So I think it just makes sense from a national security standpoint, for especially a country like the United States, who's trying to become, or who is, the world superpower and try to retain their position as the world's premier superpower. I think it just makes sense to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, because right now Bitcoin is still relatively low in terms of price in the grand scheme of things, right? There's nothing stopping the U.S. government from printing some fiat money and buying Bitcoin with it, and then in the future, it will look really smart, right? So I don't know if you guys know this piece of history, but the United States has bought land before with fiat money, or I guess back then it was gold backed, but still, right? They used their capital reserves to buy land, and then all of the land purchases were great ideas, right? And it's led to the United States becoming the world's premier superpower. And I'm talking about the Louisiana land purchase and the purchase of Alaska, right? So those two together increase the size of the United States just by geographic area, by magnitudes, and those were heavy contributors to America's success in history and on the world stage. So something like this, I think it requires it requires politicians to have long-term vision, which is really rare these days. You don't meet a lot of politicians with long-term vision, unfortunately. And I'm talking about both Canada and the US, by the way, right? But I think something like a strategic Bitcoin reserve is something that if a politician had long-term vision, that they should do. So this is just kind of like a brief explainer. And back to, I think Tristan, you brought up this point earlier, where we have this kind of dichotomy between these three candidates that are running for president, right? Donald Trump, RFK, and Kamala Harris, where RFK understands Bitcoin. I wouldn't say completely, but he understands a lot more than a lot of people, including Trump or Kamala. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like RFK will win. And I found out he's not even on the ballot in Tennessee. So he's not on the ballot in all 50 states. So it's kind of hard to win the presidency if you're not on the ballot, right? And it's not his fault, by the way. I don't want to sound like I'm blaming him. It's because of all these archaic rules that favor the two governing parties. It's a mess, right? It's hard to run as an independent, I'm sure. But unfortunately, the fact is RFK is not on the ballot in a lot of states, so he's probably not going to win. So our final choice is between Kamala Harris, who working with the Biden administration has propped up Gary Gensler, who's propped up all these policies that are openly hostile towards Bitcoin and the crypto industry. And then you have someone like Trump, who he doesn't understand Bitcoin fully, but he's willing to listen to experts and listen to advice, right? And I know it sounds ridiculous for those viewers or those people who might be anti-Trump for me to say, or for you to hear, that Trump is willing to listen, but it's true, right? Trump used to be anti-Bitcoin, but then he pivoted super fast when it appears that a lot of these tech elites or Silicon Valley people or Wall Street people are now pro Bitcoin. Trump is you know what, this is actually a great thing, right? You can call it pandering if you want, and maybe it is pandering, but again, at least he's willing to listen and he's willing to change his mind. And some viewers might have been rubbed the wrong way last episode when I said that I was endorsing Trump, but I still stand by what I said. I just think that out of the candidates that are running, I actually align with RFK more than I do with Trump. But I think if I was, I'm Canadian, by the way, so I can't vote. So like my endorsement doesn't actually matter. But if I could vote, then I would still vote for Trump. And in fact, I got this hat, this MAGA hat that they were handing out at the conference. So I will proudly put that on my shelf or even wear it during election night. So I know you guys are in Calgary, but I am throwing an election night party. If by any chance you guys wanted to come back to Ontario land in November, it's elections November 5th. If you guys want to come to Ontario land, you guys are invited to the party. If not, we can remotely celebrate election night, where I will be wearing my MAGA hat. So yeah, anyways, that's it for this story. Let's move on if you guys don't have anything else to add, okay. So yeah, let's move on. In that case, so the next story is still about Bitcoin. So this is about Bitfarms actually. So throughout all this like Bitcoin Nashville and all this like other stuff that's going on, this story maybe kind of got swept under the rug a bit. But while I was at Nashville, I did hear about this story where I think I actually heard about this a little bit before Nashville actually, but Bitfarms lost the court case where it was ruled that they were unreasonable in imposing a 15% threshold for the poison pill. So usually poison pills are 20%, right? So which means that like if a company is trying to acquire you and you don't want them to acquire you, like what's happening with Riot trying to acquire Bitfarms, they can implement the company that's trying to be acquired, that's like trying to resist the acquisition. They can implement a poison pill, which is kind of diluting the company that's accumulating your shares once they hit a certain threshold. So Bitfarms has set that threshold to 15%, but a court ruled that was unreasonable. They should set it to 20%, like how it is in any other poison pill policies. So Bitfarms was forced to amend their poison pill to 20% as the threshold, which means that now Riot can acquire up to 20% or 19.9% of the company without triggering the poison pill. So before they were limited to 14.9%, right? Now they can get up to 19.9%, and you bet that they will get up to 19.9%. I haven't seen an announcement, but I'm pretty sure that they will get up to that within the coming days. This is going to help them with their bid to acquire Bitfarms, and it's certainly going to help them get more votes in terms of trying to place their allies onto the board of directors, which they've already suggested 3 names to be put on the board of directors, and that vote is scheduled for October 29th, 2024. So if you don't want Bitfarms, if you don't want Riot to acquire Bitfarms, and you're a Bitfarms shareholder, you better vote against this, because Riot is going to acquire up to 19.9 and then try to get allies and try to make the vote go their way. And they even launched a website, a betterbitfarms.com, which anyways, so that's the news around the poison pill. And I also want to bundle one more part to this, which is Bitfarms' July operational update. They just named the highlights, but the highlight, I think the biggest highlight, is that they earned 253 Bitcoin in July 2024, which is a large noticeable increase from their June numbers, which I think was 180 something. So it's a nice increase there, although they did add a lot of exahash. That's the main contributor, right? They didn't get like that much more efficient, but because they added a lot of exahash, they do have a lot more Bitcoin per month now that they're mining, which is nice. And they added 111 of those 253 Bitcoin that they mined to their treasury. So their treasury now holds over 1,000 Bitcoin, which is nice because I think when I first started buying the stock, they had, I don't know, like 800 something Bitcoin, and then now they've increased that by 20%, which is nice. And then all they're still moving ahead with all their expansion plans. I'm not gonna like get into too much detail about that because of time, but yeah, that's the operational update. So now is the time that I want to pass the questions to you guys. So if you guys have any comments onto what you think about the Bitcoin or the Bitfarms poison pill being amended to 20% now, and do you have any comments about what you thought of the July update? And also give it a grade, right? I'll say my grade later, but if you guys want to give it a letter grade, right? A, or you can use pluses and minuses too, or A minus, B plus, whatever, right? If you want to give it a grade of this July update. So yeah, anyways, take it away.
Okay, sure. I'll go first. So overall, I think that kind of sucks for Bitfarms overall, like having to raise up to 20% was it, and then like Riot owning a max of 19.9%. If you're like a total Bitfarms bull, this isn't necessarily good news, but in hindsight, I haven't really seen Bitfarms shoot up to like close to 5 in a bit. So I don't know about right now, but I don't know if Riot necessarily has like almost 19.9%. You can like correct me and interrupt me if they do, but when that time comes, I'm sure we'll probably notice it might be good for us then. And if, to be honest, if the stock ends up going to 5, I might possibly sell, but I feel like psychologically when we're like at the 5, I probably won't. It's all like a game at the same time, so we'll see when we get there. For now, it's good news and bad news. And overall, in terms of like the July 2024 updates, to be honest, it's a solid B plus. I think everything that's happening is supposed to happen, and some like good news is in there, but it's nothing special to be honest. So I don't know if you guys agree with me on that. Tristan can go ahead.
Yeah, so as a Bitfarm shareholder, I'm not a huge fan of the bid attempt by our good friend Riot. I think that they're severely undervaluing the company. I think that their way of doing business on this has been extremely unprofessional, and across the board, it's not a company that I have much interest in working with in any way, shape, or form, or having acquired Bitfarms. So from that perspective, I would not be inclined to have them, replace or put on any board members or anything like that. And I don't like them in being able to increase their hold up to 20% or just under 20%. They've already started buying more shares from what I saw in news sources. If I recall correctly, they've already hit 16.9 or something like that. So they're already just gearing up for that, which is very unfortunate. So I think on that front, it's not exact. I wouldn't call it good news for Bitfarms. It's definitely something that could cause a fair amount of FUD, particularly at a time when Bitfarms will be potentially running for October, for example. Like that is in the past been a fairly good month for Bitcoin miners. So if there's any FUD with regards to this board members factor, that would be a bit of a problem. And then in addition, I would say with regards to their operations, I think it was perfectly fine. It's not great. It's not amazing. It's not particularly exciting. It's not like they had an upset. They undershot the exahash again. which is not ideal, but their operations are perfectly fine. No glaring issues. All in all, it's not really a big deal. It's just like there's no problems. I feel like that's more so what I'm concerned about with regards to these operationals, is that are you generally on track with your plan? Yes, they're generally on track with their plan. And are you surrounded by pitfalls? And they are not surrounded by pitfalls besides Riot. So I think it's in a good spot.
What was your letter grade to the July update for Bitfarms, Tristan?
Give it like a B. It was fine.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that. So I would also give it just a solid B, not a B minus, not a B plus, just a B. And this is because I think it wasn't mentioned in the highlights. So what Tristan was saying earlier about them missing their total exahash, what is meant by that is I think if you click into the press release, they're on their actual press release, it says that they got up to 11.1 exahash operational, which, we were promised 12 exahash by the end of June, I believe, right? So end of first half of 2024. So they didn't miss that target. However, it's not a huge miss. And, I would like to see it hit 12 exahash or more at some point. But I think, we shouldn't get too caught up on that. And I'm like trying to be as objective as I can, even though I am a Bitfarms shareholder. So of course I will be a little bit biased, but trying to be as objective as I can. I think the way that we should look at this exahash growth is that it's not a linear scale, right? So it doesn't just increase by like 0.01 exahash like every day or something like that. So what happens is that they suddenly install a bunch of miners when the shipment arrives, and then whenever the power company turns on the power, they turn on the miners, and then their exahash goes up like by a step all at once, right? So it's not like a linear scale, it's a step scale when they increase their exahash per second. So you're sitting there thinking like, oh, they're only at 11.1, but they promised 12. Maybe like by this time next month they'll be at like 14, right? So like, because they installed a bunch of miners, who knows, right? So I believe that Ben Ganon, the new CEO of Bitfarms, he did reiterate that they're still on track to hit their 21 exahash goal by the end of this year. So we're going to hold him accountable to that. I know he's busy. He just had a new kid, apparently. So he's probably a little bit distracted these days, but hopefully not too distracted. Because, congrats to Ben. But we do have a lot of our wallets on the line, too. So, yeah, take care of his kid, but also take care of shareholders, hopefully. And I have full faith in Ben. He's a great guy. So, yeah, anyways, that's my thoughts for the updates. In terms of the poison pill, I don't really have that much to say about that. Obviously, it's not great, and I'm not a shareholder in Riot for a reason. I think their operations are not the best, and yeah, like it's just they've had a lot of hiccups in terms of like expanding their hash rate. Riot. And I think Bitfarms is a much better run company. So I'm not a big fan of like a worse run company acquiring a better run company, especially when I'm a shareholder in the better run company, right? I think Bitfarms will be much better by itself rather than under the umbrella of Riot. So yeah, I'm gonna obviously vote against whatever Riot is trying to do, putting their own people on the board, right? And not to like insult the people that they're like that they've suggested. I'm sure they're great people, but I have no trust because Riot is the one that's naming them, right? Just sorry, I'm gonna vote against whatever the I don't have that many shares, by the way, so like my votes will probably not change like in the grand scheme of things, right? Like I have a lot of shares in my opinion, but I don't have a lot of shares in like just objectively. So for what it's worth, I think in my opinion, and you vote however you guys want to if you're a Bitfarm shareholder, but in my opinion, I think that as Bitfarm shareholders, it's in our best financial interest to vote against this proposal when the meeting happens in October. October 29th is the date. So anyways, that's it for that story. Let's move on for the sake of time. If you guys don't have anything else to add on that story, great. So on to a little bit of politics news, a lot of politics news, actually. So this week, I'm going to sound like a broken record because I am going to once again talk about the rise of the alt left. And I know those words might be triggering for some people, but if you haven't turned off the video by now, please listen to me and then make your decision on whether I am the next alt-right Alex Jones or whatever you want to call me, right? So again, with these politics news, I know it triggers some people, but I always try to be as objective as possible and as centrist as possible. In fact, in my Twitter bio, I say that I am a centrist. Maybe people would disagree with me on that, but this is just how I view things, right? And I welcome a debate because I know you guys are, more left-leaning than me probably at this point, right? Like center left. But I think you guys are reasonable people, right? And I'm talking about Dom and Tristan, right? I don't know about our audience members. Hopefully our audience members are reasonable people too. I'm sure they are. So yeah, anyways, let's talk about the stories, right? So the first story that I want to talk about is a communist march in Philadelphia. And I'm not saying communist as like a diss this time. I mean that's literally what they call themselves. They're actually, literally the communists, right? So they call themselves the Revolutionary Communists of America. And then they went on this march waving like, communist flags and stuff like that, red, kind of Soviet Union inspired flags, I guess you can say. Yeah, like this is just I tweeted about what my thoughts about this when I first saw this video, right? So I'm gonna read my tweet and you guys tell me if I'm being unreasonable or do you guys think I'm, actually have a point there, right? So what I said was after watching this video is if you just briefly look at this crowd, they appear to primarily be white upper middle class people whom I would imagine has never experienced real communism. I bring up the fact that they're white, not to make it a thing about race, but to underscore the point that I come from a family of immigrants from China. If you ask any Chinese person what their experience was in Mao's Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward, I don't think these people will be cheering for communism after that. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Here in the West, we have had the luxury of never having experienced real communism, and let's keep it that way. So that's kind of what my thoughts are. Yeah, and I think that just one final point before I pass it to you guys. If there was like, there's extremists on both sides, obviously, right? I'm not like trying to say that these people represent the entire left. So don't get me wrong, okay? I understand that there's extremists from both sides, but let's just say that there was an alt-right rally, right? So like a neo-Nazi rally or whatever, right? Like a legit fascist rally, then it would be all over the news, right? But you guys probably didn't hear about this story until I just presented to you now. When you got to wonder, why is that the case, right? Like I think the media has a left-leaning bias, and when there's left-leaning extremists, these stories often go unreported. And there were like, this wasn't like a small number of people, right? Like if you watch like the video, there's like a couple hundred at least people in this march. So there are extremists on both sides. And again, I'm not saying that this represents the entire left, but I think we should point out like these alt-left extremists when like stuff like this happens, right? Again, if there was a neo-Nazi march, like we would all universally condemn it, and we should. However, when there's an alt-left communist march, when it's like, in my opinion, promoting a lot of, you know, murderous and violent ideology. If you just look at any like communist countries around the world, I think that like the media kind of just sweeps it under the rug. And I only saw this because of X, and in my opinion, is because Elon bought X, or it was called Twitter back then, and now it's called X. But it's because Elon bought it, and you know, he, at least I think he's trying to make an effort to make it fair to both sides. So that's why I saw this on X when this was not reported in the media at all, in the mainstream media. So just to get what you guys think about this, like, do you guys think that, you know, America has a problem with alt-left extremists? Do you think that this is overblown? Do you think that this is just like, you know, this is like an okay thing to do, or, you know, okay thing to march in a communist kind of, you know, parade? Or like, just what are your thoughts around this in general?
I don't think they're gonna get anywhere. Like I think it's very clear to me that communism is very niche. Most people are not sitting there going, woohoo, let's go be communist. So this is going to be a small subsection of the population no matter what. I don't think they're going to get anything done. There's been a Communist Party of Canada. There's a Communist Party in the States. Like, there's like 10 people in them. And yes, I know that there was like 200 people at this march kind of thing, or maybe more, you know. But in the grand scheme of like the population of the US, that's not actually that many. I don't think most people are subscribed to this level of thinking. So I think it's basically kind of I think it's, I don't know if I would necessarily view it as this as a sign of the rise of the alt left per se, any more so than you know, back when there were some alt right rallies with like regards to I forget the one place where there was the protesters and counter protesters. I feel like there was a church in the name, but I remember there was a big kerfuffle over there. I think it's clear that there is a very small subset of the population who is interested in the alts of these scenarios, whether it's the alt left or the alt right. I think that the alt left tends to be more socially acceptable, if only because I believe we have more left-leaning governments in power currently. I think that I also think that the alt-right has more negative perception at a glance, because, you know, when you think about the symbols of these different sides, you know, the hammer and sickle for like communism, most people don't associate that with the genocide, even though you know, obviously millions of people died as a result of this you know, under communism, for communism, whatever. Whereas the kind of the quintessential symbol of the alt-right is the Nazi flag, and their main factor that people remember them for is the Holocaust, which was obviously peak. Things are terrible. Millions of people are dying. You know, genocide. It's like, it's clearly, I think most people clearly understand the negative side of the alt-right, whereas I think there's a much more of misunderstanding, as well as you know, people just don't associate the hammer and sickle, for example, as you know, a symbol of the millions of people who died in like China, for instance, during the Mao industrial, I forget what it's called. You know, the thing Mao did. You mentioned
cultural revolution.
Yeah. A cultural revolution. That's
great leap forward. Yeah.
The Great Leap Forward, yes. So I just don't think that people associate them. So I think it's, in some regards, it's kind of a marketing issue. The Nazis have worse marketing, and I'm not saying that they should have better marketing. To clarify, I think that both sides obviously are kind of nuts. I think it's just very clear to me that it's very clear, I think, to me and for most people, that the Nazis are bad. And if you have the Nazi flag on your side, you're probably not on the right side of history. But it's not as apparent with a communist hammer and sickle kind of Soviet flag.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you just said, right? I think you pointed out like a very like a big problem in society these days in the West that we need to correct, which is these two ideologies, fascism versus communism. They're both extremes, but on opposite ends. But we treat them differently. Where you said, communist ideology, alt left ideology in general is more widely accepted when, in my opinion, it shouldn't be, right? Like they're both ideologies that have led to genocide and led to a lot of death in the world and destruction. Where it's one side where it's like if somebody waves like a Nazi flag, or if it's somebody's an outright self-proclaimed fascist, we all universally agree that that person is probably a bad person, right? Or at least their ideology that they're promoting is a bad like ideology. But if somebody waves like a communist flag around, then all of a sudden there's like a big debate, right? And yeah, again, what you said about like Mao's Great Leap Forward and all this stuff, um, I totally agree, right? Like it's like the West has not experienced something like that. So what I mentioned about, if you just look at the people that are in this parade, they're all wearing like modern clothes that are built like in by capitalism, right? And they're probably using like they probably all have a phone, they probably all use computers, they probably use like the banking system and uh, financial services, right? A lot of this is the fruits of capitalism, and yet like they're enjoying the fruits of capitalism while they're promoting a communist ideology which threatens to take away all of that from everybody, right? And it's like and yeah, I just think that like it's somehow the upper middle class of people that is like the most subscribed to these alt left ideologies, which I think is kind of really sad, because if we actually did go to like a communist government, those are the people that are going to be persecuted first, quite frankly, right? Because like they have no like these people have probably never worked like actual jobs where they need to like actually maybe this is my personal bias, but like it's just these people have probably never worked actual jobs, that have never worked like super hard and like have all these like skills to know how to build a business and how to like run a business and operate like big business operations, and then you have these people that have like no contributions to society, that's like promoting this communist ideology that threatens to take away the fruits of labors of others, right? Like I know that was just a politically charged statement, but this is just my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree with it. But yeah, Tristan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, sorry. Just before we let Dom speak, I actually have a theory on why it tends to be the middle class that has some of the more so the propensity to lean into this ideology, and I think it's mostly because they're the ones who tend to have enough money to you know feel like they should be able to do stuff, but because of the failings of our society and our governments, etc., they can't afford to do anything. So for example, like they can't afford to buy houses, they can't afford to buy um, cars or whatever, they're in debt, all this stuff where it's like they feel like they should be doing better, and so they jump over to looking at an alternative perspective. So they hard correct is kind of what I'm thinking, instead of like how solving it at the cause. I think that they hard correct over
Yeah, so
onto it.
like I'm not saying that their problems are not valid, right? I understand that there's a tough economic time going around for a lot of people. Like heck, I just got fired from my job, right? So like I understand that this is this like the economy is a big issue, that's top of mind for a lot of people. However, yeah, like you said, I don't think this warrants going extreme either way, right? So there's two solutions that you can do when there's like, when you feel like life is not going your way. You can choose to kind of like analyze the problem deeply and find out why exactly, or you just like do like dispense with all the thinking and then pick an enemy, preferably an abstract enemy, like something like capitalism is the result of like my troubles, and then you just blame capitalism, right? Everything is capital. I lost my job. That's because capitalism, right? Or it's not because of like inflation. It's because of capitalism. It's not because of the money printing, right? And it's just, I think it's just a very childish way to look at the world, and it comes from a kind of lack of understanding of how the world works. And we've seen a lot of bad consequences that we can talk about later of communism. But let me just give Dom a chance to speak, because I know we kind of skipped over Dom. So yeah, what are your opinions before we move on to the next part?
I'd say like for the sake of time, I think I can like pause. But like okay, since I'm already here, like all in all, I think yeah, both sides should be equally advertised like via like news networks, and it's like kind of not cool how like one side alt left isn't advertised as much as right. I think if you dig deep, they're both equally as wrong. So I think they should both get equal exposure to the news, and I guess society is just portrayed this way, but it is what it is. Hopefully it can change. So just for the sake of time, like I'm okay to end
Yeah,
here.
like, and that's the thing, right? Like, you never even hear the word alt left in the media, and I think these days it's the media is so biased that they don't even acknowledge that the alt left exists. Like, think about how many times you've heard the word alt right just browsing through like online media, or like watching like channel news and TV and stuff. I don't know if you guys still watch TV, but like, they this alt right this, alt right that, and then they never mention alt left, because apparently the alt left doesn't exist. Well, the alt left clearly does exist, but the media is just not reporting on it, right? So it's just, I just wanted to point out that bias, and to move on to the second part of this story. I think Tristan, you brought this up earlier, where you were saying how like, what's the big deal about these like people, right? It's only like, they're not going to change anything because it's only like 200 people out of like Philadelphia, a city with like millions of people, right? Well, it can be a big deal if this movement start to like be normalized and accepted and spread to like more people, right? And you think that it can't happen in like a country like Canada or the United States, where liberal Western democracies, and like the Canadian Communist Party has never gotten more than like a few thousand votes at most, just like nationwide, right? But let me point to an example that like started off as sort of a small movement, but then got out of control within a matter of a few decades, right? So I'm talking about Venezuela. So when the Venezuelan socialists under, I think his name was Hugo Chavez, when Chavez took over, uh, the party and Chavez himself and his party promised a lot of things that are like socially appealing and socially acceptable, right? So they promised affordable housing, they promised free education, they promised universal health care. They promise all these like good things, right? Like the government is going to take care of you, and the government is going to like get back at the greedy capitalists for taking the country's wealth and profiting off of people who are just trying to get by, right? So these kind of sentimentalities are like are acceptable to most people, right? Most people, like, not only are they acceptable, they're appealing. So most people think about like these most people hear about these issues and hear about these promises, and they're like, oh, that's great. So then they vote for, you know, the socialist government, and then the socialist government starts to take over. And then what they do is, because socialism is really bad at managing the economy, let's face it, right? What they do is they nationalize industries, and then they like take the wealth from the rich. And then once they took all the wealth from the rich, they still need to spend more to like help the poor, and all the rich who can leave have left, and all the rich who are remained are no longer rich because the government took their money. And then you can still be rich if you're part of the government, by the way, right? So it's not like they redistributed all the wealth. It's like there's a lot of corruption too. And then you know, you have all these like unemployment shoots through the roof. And then the public sector expands because like everyone all of a sudden works for the government, because the government is the only one that has unlimited money to spend now, because they plundered all the private industries. And then you end up with like empty grocery stores. You end up with, you know, an erosion of civil rights too, right? Now, like, I think I was watching a live stream of this guy Jesse, Micro to Macro. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of him, but he was saying how he was reading about Venezuela back in the 90s. And back then, Venezuela was the third richest country in the entire world. And then within 30 years, they became like, you know, nearing the bottom of the list in terms of wealth. And in fact, you know, poverty is a huge issue in Venezuela now. People are digging for food out of trash cans. And what we saw with Venezuela recently, why I'm bringing this up, is that they recently had an election. So during this election, the official election agency, I forget what it's called, but it's all like the allies of Nicolas Maduro, who is the dictator essentially of Venezuela right now. So all his allies that runs the election agency, and they published this result, which apparently shows like the percentages adding up to 109% in total. So it's like, how could you have 109% of the vote? Out of 109% of the votes, Nicolas Maduro got 51%. How strange, right? Exactly enough to get over half. Yeah, because of this result, Nicolas Maduro has proclaimed victory, where there's, you know, there's widespread reports of, you know, very clear fraud, right? So what they would do is they would send thugs to the polling stations to steal the ballot boxes and then just destroy the ballots, or they would just send people to like block the entrances to the polling stations so that people can't get in. It's all this type of stuff, and even that wasn't enough to kind of just, you know, sweep everything under the rug, because there's been private investigations that shows that his rival, his chief rival, Edmundo Gonzalez is his name, actually got around maybe like 70% of the vote, is closer to the true results, and Maduro maybe only got like 20% of the vote. But apparently, according to the official results, he got 51%, and then now he's proclaiming that he won. And yeah, at one point the election, like, they stopped counting the votes too. So the election agency like stopped publishing results for 3 hours, which is not suspicious at all, right? And yeah, you can see what happens when these like kind of governments take over on the promise of, like, you know, making healthcare affordable, making housing affordable, and like promoting all these alt-left ideologies, like, you know, requisitioning wealth and, you know, privatize or I guess nationalizing private business and all this stuff, right? And this, lastly, this is a photo of a shop owner. And this shop owner, I think this was before Maduro came to power, and then this is after Maduro came to power. So he got a lot thinner, and there's nothing left in his shop. And just lastly, I made a meme, right? It's like Venezuela, a lot of Venezuelans who are fleeing the, you know, communist / socialist government actually fled to America. Yeah, it's like the socialists who are the anti-socialist like citizens who are fleeing to America, are fleeing there, and then they end up in a city like Philadelphia, and they see like a 200 strong march for communism in America. So I think this is just kind of ironic. But yeah, anyways, let me pass a question off to you guys. What do you guys think? Am I just like being alt-right, or do you think I have a point that we need to be on guard against alt-left ideology?
Well, like from what I'm hearing from like the both of you, you two, and stuff like that, I think alt left and alt right equals no, not good. So I think in general, I think we should have awareness for that in general, and we should do the best in our power to be as far away from that as possible to like make it common sense cautions like decisions, and like to know, oh, this is probably good for me, this is not good for me, and to I guess be like mindful of doing the right thing, I guess, overall. So I'll say that.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's important that we acknowledge that there are risks from both sides. I don't think that it would be fair to say that one side is necessarily more dangerous than the other when we really break it down, because, at the end of the day, what are we going to do? Count kill counts? Like, that gets really ridiculous. So I think, and with regards to Venezuela, I think that the one factor that maybe we didn't touch on earlier, or Andy didn't touch on, is that from my understanding, that is a country where there was a lot of international interference across the board. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're in the mix of their election fraud, there is external factors as well who are throwing their hat in the realm or pushing for one candidate over another, and shifting the tide of votes. And particularly because they have the world's largest oil supply, and that is makes them a very desirable place to mess around with. So from that regard, it does seem, maybe, I don't know if in that case I would necessarily say that I think it's purely an alt-left scenario where I think that the alt-left is the cause of the issues. I think that in that one, there is a lot of blame that can come from the combination of them being a massive oil power and everyone wanting to get a piece of that pie, and the issues that causes because of the different groups and interests that are now all involved in keeping that place as stable or unstable as possible. So it's just what
I mean, I agree with what you said. I'm just kind of thinking it from both sides, right? Because there's years when I would say that the rise of the alt-right is an issue, and there's years when I say the rise of the alt-left is an issue, right? So I believe that back in maybe like 2015, 2016, when Trump was running for president, and it was like we're coming off of like a time of relative peace, at least here in the West. And I think that maybe the economy was like doing pretty well back then, so it wasn't like top of mind. And then when we saw all this stuff with like, with Trump saying that he's going to ban all Muslims from coming into the country, and there's like, neo-Nazi rallies and stuff like that. So I would say that back then, it's like maybe the alt-right was an issue. But now I'm seeing the opposite. Like, to be fair to both sides, right? I'm seeing that the rise of the alt-left is like becoming a bigger and bigger issue in Canada and in the US. And I'm not saying that Canada is gonna for sure end up like Venezuela, right? I understand that every country is different, every scenario is different, but I'm just saying that I see a lot of similar patterns that are coming up, where Venezuela went from a liberal kind of, well, I don't know if it's a liberal democracy before or not, but it was like, it wasn't as bad, right? The economy was doing well, and everything was happening, like, the citizens were happy till what it's like today within 30 years. So here in Canada, we're sitting here thinking like, oh, our country's doing like not too badly. It could be better, obviously, but there's no way that we'll end up in a scenario where there's like men with guns standing outside of polling stations and stealing ballot boxes and like, you know, the election agency shutting down for 3 hours and then announcing who's going to win. You don't know that, right? Like, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I think that that's a real possibility. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think it's fair to say that there is a possibility of things continuing down a certain path if we do not pay attention to the way that things are moving. So I think that some reservations are important, and we need to make sure that, you know, as a country, both Canada, the States, wherever, that we're cognizant of the risks that are prevalent on either of these sides, and maybe focus on how to ensure that our country does not become a failed state similar to some of these other ones. So I'm kind of, I would say I'm on board with your concern. My level of concern may be less than yours, I would say, because I think that you're very concerned about the rise of the alt left. I think from my perspective, my concerns tend to be more so on the massive separation between the left and the right across the different political spheres of countries, where the left and the right have moved so far away from each other that the areas that they see eye to eye on are virtually non-existent, meaning that we have a very it's not a very good political environment, I would say. And I think that's more so
polarized. It's a very polarized world.
Very much. And I think so I think on that regard, your perspective, the alt left and the alt right, is very much just the extreme of that, because previously we were seeing an alt right rise, and now we're seeing more, and then from your perspective, we're seeing more of an alt left rise. It's kind of just this polarization, just whoever's louder at that time, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like, you know, believe it or not, I used to be considered center left, but I guess by today's standard, I am now considered center right. And I feel like I haven't moved at all. I feel like it's recently that the left has moved left a lot more than the right has moved right, such that what was center left is now center right. But maybe you guys would disagree with that, and we're out of time to debate that topic, so we'll pick it back up another time. But let me just pass it to Dom for some final comments, and then we can wrap up.
I don't remember like what your questions were specifically, but I'll just make a few comments. So hopefully we don't end up like a place like Venezuela with their political systems and like rigging and whatnot. I think that's really bad, and I don't think we'll end up like that, just because I feel like people are generally more civil and happier with the more money each person has. And I think like Canada and the States generally has access to more like money, just because of how well our companies are doing and like in our innovation and things like this. So I don't think we'll be, you know, as corrupt as, I'm Filipino, so like as the Philippines, or like, you know, these South American countries like Venezuela. Shout out to Alejandro, our friend. But yeah, I think we'll be okay. And I mean, I could be wrong, but I think we'll be okay. And I guess I can also wrap up today if you guys want. I could do that. Okay, cool. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, as well as our clips channel. And on top of that, our personal channels is too as well, and our Zillennial Reacts clips channel coming. No, I'm kidding. Just those channels. We'll see. But thank you guys. See you later.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.